And I remember I was telling my brother and some friends, I was like, I'm taking off this uniform, but my work is not done. I want to be that space for veterans where they can come deal with life issues and not have to worry about them losing their military career.
Welcome to Veteran Voices, SITREP, with your hosts, Tom and Chris Faust.
Welcome to Veteran Voices. I am Tom Faust, your co-host with my son, Chris. And today we are here talking with Vanity Dawson. And she has experience in the Air National Guard and with the Army SHARP program. And she's a licensed clinical, I'll let you say that, which you are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about how you decided to get involved in the Air National Guard, etc.
Okay, so, my name is Vanity. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. That's the LCPC. Actually, being in the Air National Guard is what started my foundation to being an LCPC, which came later. I have a lot of family members that is in the military who have served. And I remember I started my journey back in 2011. My brother said, you need to go serve because he's in the Air Force. And I did. I went to the Air Force. He didn't tell me about no other branch. I didn't look at any. Of course not. He said, you got to go to the Air Force. And I was like, all right. And then I went to a recruiter and he was like, no, you got to go to the Air National Guard. And I was like, well, what's the difference? One's federal, one's state. And, with the Air National Guard, each state has one. And then I wouldn't have to, I would be assigned to that specific place. So that's the difference. So I joined the DC Air National Guard in 2012 after going through all my process. And that's when really my journey into purpose started. When I started in 2012, my AFSC, that's what we call it, was actually airfield management. So I was doing that for a while. Actually, I served for about 8 years, so I did it the entire 8 years. If I had to choose another job, I was like, I don't know what else I would do. I love being on the airfield, right? I love looking at all the aircraft and just getting to drive the little blue truck on the runway. Like, that's like, who doesn't want to do that, right? But being in the military, we had to go through these annual trainings, and one of them was sexual assault training, prevention. And I remember I'm a survivor of child sexual assault and domestic violence. And I remember I used to get so triggered going to the trainings, and I would just like skip them, or I would sit in the training and I would just like my body would freeze up. And I remember one time specifically, we had to go through the training again. And I remember going to the victim advocate that they have. Each base has one, each unit has one. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't sit for this training, not this year. And it was like, you don't have to. And then it was like, you should be a victim advocate. And I was like, okay, no. I can't even tell you how or what made me just go and say, okay, I'm going to do it. But I eventually went and showed my interest. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a victim advocate. I sat in training, and that's really when my journey into the whole mental health started. This happened in 2016, right? So we was 4 years in to service by then. So 2016 in the fall, I remember I'm sitting for a whole 40-week training, right? Just to be a victim advocate. And they're talking about how to deal with people who experiences military sexual assault, which we call, MST, and how to deal with people, how to talk to them, how to, show compassion, but also, be compassionate towards yourself. And I was like, man, this is cool. I'm going to get to help other veterans who is possibly feeling how I feel. And I was going through it. Starting my journey in the Air Force, like I was struggling. And this is like the after effects of, experiencing trauma. So then, those questions will pop up like, well, how am I going to help other people when I'm struggling? How am I going to help somebody through their sexual assault? And I didn't even deal with mine. Little did I know, me helping people as a victim advocate was helping me.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you might be going through some things, but as you're helping other people, you can kind of help yourself the same way, because it's like, okay, now you're able to practice what you preach, kind of a thing. So what were some of your key responsibilities, working in the victim advocacy within the Air Force?
Believing the victim. You have somebody to say, hey, I was sexually assaulted, or with the Army, sexually harassed. That is the difference between the two programs. The Army deals with assault and harassment, where the Air Force just deals with assault, and harassment they send to EO or EEO, right? Believing that person that comes to you and say, hey, I was assaulted, sitting there and listening to them and helping them through the entire process, from the moment they say, I need help, I want to file a report, or maybe I don't want to file a report, I need services, sharing what those services are with them, and walking with them through the entire process. And even if they say, hey, they want an investigation, I'm going to go to court, something like that, right? A lot of times they may go to court. They got to do interviews. They got to talk about, their experience. A lot of these interviews are recorded, right? And it can be very overwhelming. So you're that support system for them. And you're that person that's walking throughout the whole process with them. You're holding their hand. Even at the end, right? You're asking them, even say at the end of the court process. And maybe the outcome is what they want it to be, or maybe it's not. We're still there to be a support system to them even afterwards. So those are the key things. It's a lot.
So you've mentioned, working with individuals who've been assaulted, and these are, I guess to this point, I would have assumed that these are members of the military themselves. Mm-hmm. You also work with the families, spouses, children, that kind of thing?
Yeah, families. So people that were directly related to the service members, but they also, for situations like that, I know like with the Army, they have family advocacy programs. So like there's a different process for, civilians versus military members. And it's with, the legal and all of that stuff. So it could look a little different, but, they could still file a report if they want to. But most of the people I worked with were service members. But one thing I would say with non-service members that, I got to do is when I was working in the Army, before I worked for SHARP, and I got out of service, I was working for the FAP program, which is the Family Advocacy Program, right? So this is like you have those cases with child abuse or domestic violence, things like that for the family members. I got to do a lot of training, and even being a victim advocate, it led me up to training because that was part of the role. You're training service members on sexual assault prevention and bystander intervention, right? You're training every single year. You're training all throughout the year. Then eventually I ended up training, doing a trainer. So I had to get trained on how to train members to go train other members. Right. So that little thing prepared me for FAP, which was nothing but training. We would do self-care lessons. We're training on child abuse prevention to child care workers on base. Anger management is a big one, especially anger management. Just those different if you think about interpersonal relationships, communication, right? We would train anything that was going to help build healthy relationships and healthy communication between families. And we would train a lot of the family members to service members.
So, kind of working, since you had mentioned it a little bit, so working with both children and veterans, kind of, puts you in a unique position. How do their needs differ? And what surprises you most in working with both groups?
Mm-hmm. So while I was working with Sapper and Sharp, it was all adults. But my work now, I work with children as an LCPC. So when I got out of that, the military, and I became a mental health therapist, I remember when I was doing my internship, they threw me in the school. Threw me out in the ocean. I was like, oh my gosh. And it was inside of an elementary school. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do not know what I'm doing. But there's definitely a difference in how you care and provide support for children versus adults. But at the same time, adults are big children. Okay. One thing I noticed, kids, they're like brutally honest, right? But they're brutally honest. I will never forget a kid I had, and I was writing something. They said, "Are you writing my business?" I always laugh at that. It's so funny. Honest, right? They're just so transparent. And sometimes with adults, we have to pull stuff out. That could be like that with children, but also the language changes. So how you may talk to an adult differs from a child. And then each child or human goes through a developmental stage, all the way from conception and you're, not even born yet to the moment you're born. You go through early childhood, late childhood, your adolescence, teenage years, young adult, your middle age, and then you're, older. Right? There's so many different stages, and each stage there's something different. So you take that into consideration, right? With the language, how you care for somebody older, they may be set in their ways, like not willing to change. Whereas you're teaching them something new and they may gravitate to those changes. Not saying that older people won't, but it's just, keeping in mind these differences, and also the development of the brain. Mm-hmm. There's just so many different factors.
Mm-hmm. You've worked with both, adults and now with children, and how has that evolved over time for you? I mean, you've talked about some of it, I think. Is this an ongoing thing where are you in an expansion phase where you're kind of still moving to something else, or are you settled on working with kids?
So I work with everybody now.
Okay. All right. Good.
So I started with adults, then I moved to kids, and then I moved to children and adults. So I am a trauma therapist. I work with a lot of different adults who's experienced childhood trauma. Okay. And those effects come out as they are going through their adult daily lives, right? Then I've also, me working with children, it may not be, I've experienced working with some kids who's experienced trauma, or maybe, children to a parent who's experienced trauma, right? So, each case is unique, but I do like the fact that I don't have to choose just one, which I thought I was going to do at first, because I was like, I want to just do adults. then when I first started working with kids, I had some hiccups, and I was like, I never want to work with children again. But then I was just like, no, they're near and dear to my heart. And, now I've worked with everybody because there's a need. And my niche is trauma, but it's also other things.
Well, and then kind of following along on that too. So since you've been doing it for a while and you've got the direction that you want to go, what resources or support do you believe, veterans and their families still need more access to, and how can we as a community help?
I really do believe, because I actually see veterans and they may be like out of service. I notice the ones I get are out of service. I remember taking off my uniform, getting out of service, and I remember I got out due to mental health. And the way it happened was kind of unfortunate, right? And I remember I was telling my brother and some friends, I was like, I'm taking off this uniform, but my work is not done. And what that meant and what it still means is now as me as a veteran, me being out of service, I feel like I can help veterans get help with mental health, and it be a safe space for them where they don't have to worry about getting kicked out of service, maybe because they're feeling depressed, right? Because that's what happened to me. I put, I feel depressed, and that flagged the whole thing where I had to go talk to medical, and I was just putting this year, I feel sad, right? And then I remember saying, hey, man, if I knew all of this was going to happen, I would have never put that. But then I would have continued to die inside, right? So I think about all the people that has, thought I was a safe space, even when I was a victim advocate there. And I was just a senior airman. And they would just come talk to me about different things. And they never went to leadership. And it's like we harbor these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions. We battle these. We feel like they're battling these experiences by themselves. And veterans don't have to do that. I want to be that space for veterans where they can come deal with life issues and not have to worry about them losing their military career. Now, some situations are more severe and they need, more critical help. But, there's a lot of veterans who don't speak up or seek the help that they need or resources because they're the fear of getting thrown out of service. So I want to be that resource for them. Come talk to me. Let's work it out.
So what kind of advice would you give to veterans or military members? They're struggling and they're afraid to come talk to somebody, but they, rather than keeping it all inside, they really need to talk to somebody. What kind of advice would you give them to encourage them to reach out to an advocate or to someone?
I would say, I will remind them you matter and that you're no good to somebody else if you're not good to yourself. That's the advice that I tell people. I would tell them. Just like I remember, I always used to say, the mission can't get done if you don't take care of the people. This is what I would say to leadership. You can't expect your mission to be done efficiently if your people are suffering. They're not going to put in their best quality of work if they're not even 100%. So on the opposite hand, I would say, take care of yourself mentally and physically. Who are spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is good advice there. So where can people follow your work or get in touch if they want to support your mission or access services, things like that?
My website, vanitydawson.com. I keep it real simple.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah, because like the phone number is there, the email is there. People can email me. If I have like tons of resources out there. I've written many different articles. I've done, speaking on podcasts and things, and I'm a writer, so I'm always writing something. I've been on a little break now, but I'm about to get back to it. But those resources are there. I love people, so anybody could email me and say, "Hey, I'm going through this," and I would chat with them. Even if it's a phone call, like, "Hey, I need to talk," I would make time.
That's good.
Yeah, and any links that you have, you just give us those, and then we'll just add them to the them to the podcast and everything.
Yeah,
but you did you did mention writing. We did happen to see a book of yours on Amazon. Can you tell us a little bit what that's about?
Oh yeah, it's called Life After Trauma. That was my first book. That's my story of getting through domestic violence. That we suffer in silence a lot. But we think we're suffering in silence, and sometimes it shows outwardly, right? And it really affects our lives. So I wrote the book. I wrote how my life was going after I got out of domestic violence, and it was hard going through the healing process. That's what that book is about. And then, I created a workbook to go along with it. And I actually use it in my sessions. People like it. So it's called Empowered by Resilience, because I believe that everybody is resilient. I believe that everybody can be empowered. And that's one of the core things with victim advocacy, is as well as empowering that person who went through that assault to, take back control and make good decisions for themselves afterwards. And that's what, my book is about, just kind of reminding victims or anybody that's experienced any type of trauma, right? Because everybody's traumatic experiences look different, that you can still have a good and healthy life after the fact.
That's really good advice for any situation, regardless whether it's domestic violence or anything. Is something bad might happen, you can still live. It's not the end of the world. You can get through things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And if you need it, go find help.
Yes.
There's people to talk to help walk you through it. And so it can be all confidential, I'm sure, right?
So most of the times it is, especially with sexual assault, it is like confidential. Even with domestic violence, because we talk about safety, right? A lot of trauma work, it is confidential unless somebody wants to, share it. Me, I share about my whole life publicly. I always tell people, I say, you can find it on the internet. Like I used to keep it a secret, but there is power in not being silent.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that we haven't brought up? Anything else you wanted to talk about that you'd like to share? The floor is open.
I like the work that you're doing.
Well, thanks.
That.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's very kind of you both to have me, on your podcast to, share my story as being a veteran and, my work outside of military life. There's a lot of veterans in need. And, we're here to help each other. Right. Especially like veterans, we serve the country, right? We learn to take care of people. We learn to take care of everybody around us. That's what veterans do, right? There's a mission. And what's expected of you is to do everything that you can to make sure this mission happens. And I think driving that point where it's important to make sure you are well so the mission can get done. I just really think that's just, critical.
Okay. Well, we're really glad to have you on here and to talk about this. This is what we like to do. We like to talk to people, get their stories out there to help other veterans be encouraged to do what they need to do to get the help they need. Because it's important for us that veterans, especially newly separated from the military, try to have as smooth transition as possible, because that's a difficult phase, making that shift back to civilian life.
Yeah.
After the structure in the military.
That is tough. I struggled big time when I transitioned. It was very hard for me, even being the Air National Guard, because I did work on base every day, so I was dual status. And it still has, been a challenge. So I have my own business. I work for myself. I remember working for a job after, I got out, and just the anxiety is unreal. Everything is just like different. So, that's a good point there. And not even just for, veterans that are, getting ready to come out, but even the ones that are going in, like the veterans that are going in, if you're listening to this, right? And I know I wasn't going to mention my son, but, he just joined the Marines. And I think about his journey. It's just starting. And I would want new veterans or, new service members to know, like, hey, take care of yourself. Take care of you. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your health, right? As you travel through serving, don't wait till later to learn that lesson where you're like 3 enlistments in. Do it now, right? They're our babies.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That the sooner they start to prepare for whenever that time is that they separate, the better the transition will be, I think, because they have more of a better mental position for it. That's great advice. All right. Well, like I said, I really appreciate that you've been on here with us. It's been fun talking with you, and I just hope that you continue in your work and can help a lot of these kids. And that's great that you're working with the kids.
Yeah. Oh, and I would like to give a book away in a workbook. So if you know anybody, I will. If you want to do a giveaway, I have one to donate.
Okay. We'll put that on there as well.
Okay.
First person who asked for it.
Yeah, our full care package.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
But yeah, and I mean, as far as everybody else who tunes into the podcast, we appreciate you all taking your time to watch this, and that's what we're here for, is to give the information to anybody, word of mouth, send the information. We want to provide it to show you that it is out there, and we hope that you take advantage of it. So, I mean, if you like what you're seeing here, click links, subscribe, do all the stuff there to help spread the word and help our views get out there. So that way it gets to more people. That's the big thing that we want, is to make sure that people know that there is help out there, and it's readily available, and people want to help veterans and, at any time. So we really do thank everybody for tuning in. Yeah, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to come to the next one, and hope you tune in then. So on that note, we will catch everybody later.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.